Was NIO named as working with the Chinese military? That's the question. And the answer is I don't know. This is where I went yesterday. And by the way, let me give you a date and a reference point here. This is Saturday morning. It's February 14th, 2026. I started my research on this about 5 a.m. this morning here on Saturday. And happy Valentine's Day to you, by the way, if you celebrate. The noise levels have just continued to increase here in the recent years, both politically, internally within the U.S., and then also geopolitically. I think globally things are very noisy as well. But because I want to go to the source directly whenever I can, and we had this supposed news that NIO and Alibaba and some other companies were listed, but some people were saying that NIO was listed, and some people were not saying they were listed. The problem I had was I was looking and couldn't find the actual list. Now, if you'll note here, this is a January 7th, 2025 reference. And of course, as I just said, this was yesterday, which would have been February 13th. And this is, if you actually click the link that is shared from the DOD from this, and again, this is the January 7th list, you'll see how they've got these companies listed on here. So this is the kind of thing I'll be looking for if they actually publish something. And then I'll be looking, obviously, to see if NIO is listed on it. And then if they're listed, the question or the next question for me would be, does that change anything for me? And my answer is, I don't know. I really don't know if that would. But because, and I actually want to go back to the video that I dropped yesterday and some of the reference points and stuff like that that I referenced, because my issue was I couldn't find the source directly, the information direct from the Pentagon, the DOD, whomever, however you want to reference them. And then there were folks who were, some of them were listing NIO, but they weren't listing a source. So they weren't sharing where they were getting their information. So I'm like, all right, I'm just calling this misinformation, because if I can't validate it or verify it from the source, then it's misinformation. But here's the problem, is that I can't, document or see or share or find what the DOD actually, put out and then, published and then basically pulled. So what I'm going to do is this. I had this video set as public. I'm going to unlist this video, and I'm doing it so you can see this, because I want to document things and I want to be as transparent as possible. And this is one of the comments from that video. So Duke Cliff, shout out for this. Says it's not misinformation. Bloomberg has a snapshot of the updated 1260H list, which has NIO listed on it. Currently, the list is withdrawn, but it might be republished after February 17th. I can't validate this. So I would like if someone can find, and I did spend some time digging and trying to find if Bloomberg actually has a snapshot of it, and I haven't been able to find it. Doesn't mean it's not out there. I'm guessing somebody has a snapshot of it if it's out there. And so if you do, let me know. Drop it in the comments on this video. And here's the other thing that I wanted to say is and I don't know if Brian will see this video or respond, but he had some posts that he put out there, some tweets that he put out there, and I cross-referenced and checked the Straits Times, and they did not have, they didn't have NIO listed, but they also weren't direct to the source. So again, I can't tell. This is an account that also did not share the sourced information as I could see, and they had NIO listed. So if Brian is going off of this list or what this account is putting out there, then I don't consider it credible unless I can tie it back to the source from the DOD, if that makes sense. So, but this is kind of interesting. And this is what Brian says about, and this is also why I'm hoping he'll respond, because he says, as far as if you're not sure why NIO was added, the company is aiming to develop full stack AI capabilities with notable advancements in smart driving and AI algorithm research. Now, here's the thing. I will say this. I have called for a while now that NIO is actually a leader in the autonomous driving space, but they haven't been recognized for it yet. And so if the reality is that NIO's technology is far better than what folks realize, maybe that lands them on a list. I don't know. I really don't know. But because I can't validate it or verify either way, I just figured I would unlist that video and talk about it in this video. Now, this is an article um, that I'll link in this video as well. And again, I think the timing of this matters. And by the way, these guys also didn't have NIO listed in their article here, but this is also what I was thinking about. Is this could be a little negotiating preparation for the upcoming April visit. Here's the other thing. And this continues to be in the background. And so, how ironic would it be if some of these, maybe BYD, NIO, whomever else might be named, but then they are actually invited to come to the country? And recently, Trump invited, some of these companies. He invited car makers to come and build factories here in the U.S. So this certainly could be in play. It wasn't something I was expecting. I didn't count on NIO even needing to make entry to the US with their vehicles and do well. So frankly, it wouldn't change my view um, if NIO does not come to the US in the short term. But how interesting and how crazy could things get if, in fact, NIO, BYD, some of these other companies, CATL, whomever, if they're invited to come into the US, and that's part of what we get from the April meeting. Also, Bloomberg, I remember hearing them report that the first week of April is when, they were told that Trump is going to visit Xi in China. If that's the case, what ends up, coming out of that? Is there some, are we really just seeing positioning from one or both sides at this stage with different things? And are they actually doing things behind the scenes? And by the way, I don't have it queued up, but there is a video that I will link in the description. And what I did on that video, it's an interview with Luke Gromen, and I call it connecting dots, I think is what he's doing in it. But it's generally these podcasts that I listen to are pretty long, and so you might not want to spend the time on them. But what I did is I dropped in the comment section 3 different timestamps. So if you go to the link and look in the comment section, you'll see where I have these, I think, 3 different timestamps. And so it's just sort of, hey, here are some dots. Maybe they connect some of this. And so for those of you who will take the time and look and listen and be attentive, maybe we'll see some things happening, like an alliance, partnerships, things like this, before they actually take place here. And in the upcoming months, I still think the next 2 months probably are very, and now even more so. I think they're even more interesting to me anyway, with what we might get in the way of negotiations, partnerships, things that might surprise people after that visit to China in April. Also, we've heard, and Bloomberg did report this, I heard them talking about it. They talked about 4 trips, maybe back and forth between China and the US. And so, Trump and Xi. So again, there's a lot that can still be negotiated. And maybe it doesn't end up being full on partnership or all positive, but even neutrality would be, um, I think, a net win for both countries, frankly. That's just me offering some of what I'm thinking, but I really don't know if NIO ends up getting listed, and then, depending on what would happen after April, I don't know if that changes anything for me, frankly. So I just wanted to share my thoughts, be as transparent as I can along the way. And also, as I said, this is the kind of thing that I'll be looking for because I want to go direct to the source whenever I can. So, and with that in mind, because I can't verify or validate one way or the other, and I hope someone else caught a snapshot. If it's out there, show me, talk to me, let me know, direct me to where I can find that. But in the meantime, I'll actually remove a couple of my retweets that I put out there yesterday too, just because I don't want to be, I want to be as accurate with whatever I'm digging into and finding as possible. And because in this case, I cannot validate, one way or the other, I'm just going to keep that recent video unlisted, and we'll see if we can learn anything in the short term. But it's noisy, it's messy, it's a crazy world we're living in. What can I say? So God bless you and your loved ones. Have a great weekend, and I'll be back with more content I don't know. I was gonna do a long video and share a bunch of fundamental stuff, but I don't know if I want to now. I may I we'll see. We'll see how the rest of the weekend goes. It's still early. Even as I'm recording this, it's early Saturday morning. So um and if enough people actually, here's the other thing. Full disclosure, this video when I put it out had a perfect like to dislike ratio. It had an incredibly high click-through rate, which should mean that the algorithm would push it out to more viewers, and the algorithm was not pushing it out at all. So, the reality, this is the other part of it, is I spend a lot of time researching, and then I try to be as concise in my videos as I can, within reason, sharing a lot of information and deep dive stuff. I do a lot of digging, and so when I've spent a lot of time and then the algorithm, whether it's YouTube, Google, or this platform, Twixter, as I call it, Twitter X, when they, I don't want to say they shadow ban me, but when they will give absolutely no, when the algorithm just crushes or keeps the content from being pushed out, that just means, more time that I've spent and fewer people who are even aware of, some of the things that on the deep dive side of things I'm uncovering. Um, so we'll see, that at some point, I don't know. I love the Neo Global community. Y'all tell me what to do. Let's see how the views on this video go. If it gets absolutely no traction, then yeah, maybe that's a sign I should just not worry about doing another video over the weekend, and I'll let this one go for now. But if things go a little bit better, then I'll take that as maybe a point of encouragement and maybe a deep dive on some of the things that Neo has going on, like, for example, full year profitability, which is kind of a big deal, and those prospects for NIO in this year of 2026. And there's a whole lot more that I was prepping for when this sort of news narrative or news or whatever it is, with NIO supposedly being listed as working with Chinese military. Again, I don't know. I really don't know. So that's why I want to do this video, is to share what I've been able to find, talk about what I couldn't find, and then why I did the video yesterday, and then why I'm doing this video, and XYZ sort of, outline things, also say, I don't know if it changes things for me if NIO ends up on a list. And then again, maybe it's all just positioning and attempted leverage. Who knows? I think we'll know more after the April meeting, and maybe if we get announcements, something, in the way of US, uh, you know, inviting or working with Chinese EV companies. Here's the other thing. I'll close with this. I've actually changed my view on this, because earlier on, I never cared. It never really mattered to me. I didn't have a bias, and I was indifferent as to whether or not Chinese EVs should be in the US. I really didn't think about it a lot. In the last few years, as I've watched the continued erosion of the US dollar and how it's getting harder and harder for everyday Americans to even just pay the bills. And then I see the price points on the vehicles that we have access to. And now that I realize our vehicles are not as advanced, they're not as good, they cost more. And I'm talking about, it's like a 2x. They're about twice as expensive as, let's say, if NIO comes with Envo or Firefly and you have battery swap optionality. The price point for a better vehicle is about halved from what we're paying here in the US. And it's not right that Americans wouldn't have the opportunity, wouldn't have the freedom. That's supposedly one thing we're about, after all, right? Is the freedom, um, to choose a Chinese EV and save money at the same time. It's really just about everyday Americans getting priced out of our own country, because we can't afford, because of the erosion of the US dollar. And so that's what's changed for me, is I actually hope we'll see Chinese EVs here, because it will make it more affordable for the everyday American who is struggling, to have a better vehicle and to pay less for it. And so that's my thought on that. That has changed for me, that view. But and here's the other thing, thinking back about myself, I realized I've never actually bought a new American-made vehicle. I've always owned either German or Japanese-made vehicles, and I never thought about it before until I started sort of realizing that as I see Americans struggle, as I see all this toxicity and divisiveness that really doesn't help anybody, I'm thinking, gosh, what if we had a cheaper, better option like these Chinese EVs, excuse me? And that's kind of what changed my mind on that. So I do hope that we see something in the form of this partnership, and with Chinese EVs invited to come to the US, because if nothing else, it gives Americans more options and the chance to save more money. And we need that. Anyway, I shared far more than I intended. So let me get this video up and out. Have a great day or night whenever you see this, and I'll see y'all again very soon.